Let's forget the Hollywood action movies and anime stereotypes for a minute. If you're picturing a magical assassin running around on rooftops dressed head to toe in black, you might want to brace yourself, because we are about to completely flip that image upside down. In this explainer, we're diving deep into the actual science, the intense psychology, and the raw survival tactics of Japan's most famous, yet honestly most profoundly misunderstood historical operatives. We're talking about the real-life shinobi.
So I want you to just imagine for a second that you're walking through a mist-covered ancient Japanese forest. You're completely surrounded by these massive, towering cedar trees, passing through old, weathered wooden torii gates. It's incredibly atmospheric, right? Well, this deep, rugged, mountainous terrain in regions like Iga and Koka is where the true story actually begins. What if everything you thought you knew about ninjas was just a myth? Because the reality is, they weren't supernatural beings with magical powers. They were shaped by this harsh environment into highly skilled military specialists and ultimate survivalists.
There's just a massive divide between fiction and historical fact here. On one side, you have the pop culture image, right? The black-clad assassins with straight swords and flashy combat moves. But when we look at the historical reality derived from primary sources like the 17th century Benson Sukai manual, it's a completely different story. Into actual records, they were called shinobi or sometimes rappa or supa. The word ninja, that actually didn't even become popular until the 1950s. And they definitely didn't wear black outfits to assassinate people. They wore everyday clothes. They disguised themselves as ordinary farmers or merchants, because their primary mission wasn't assassination at all. It was intelligence gathering, espionage, and complex psychological warfare.
Now, we really can't talk about ninjas without bringing up the massive global impact of manga and anime, specifically giant hits like Naruto. And yeah, obviously the magical jutsu and the explosive world-ending battles are pure fiction. But you know why those stories resonate so powerfully with people all over the world? Because they actually capture the true underdog spirit of the historical shinobi. These were real people from marginalized autonomous mountain communities who were literally fighting for their survival against massive, well-funded samurai armies. Plus, that whole narrative focus in the manga on understanding your enemy, breaking the cycle of hatred, and relying on those rich Shinto and Buddhist mythological roots, that perfectly mirrors the deep spiritual and psychological complexities of the actual historical operatives. And it was that exact spiritual complexity that fueled their tactics out in the field. A shinobi's greatest weapon absolutely wasn't a sword, it was the human mind. They used a concept called yonin, which basically means open tactics. Instead of hiding in the shadows, they hid right in plain sight. They mastered an incredibly advanced system of social engineering called shichi-hode, which translates to the 7 ways of appearance. And this wasn't just, putting on a quick costume. They assumed entire identities. They had to master the specific trades, the local dialects, and the religious customs of 7 different professions so they could openly gather intelligence without anyone ever batting an eye. Let's look at one of those disguises, the komuso, or traveling monk. Picture a monk walking peacefully through a Sengoku-era village wearing this deep bamboo basket hat called a tengai. That hat completely concealed their face, giving them absolute anonymity while still letting them see everything happening around them. But to pull this off, the shinobi couldn't just wear the hat, they actually had to learn how to expertly play the shakuhachi flute and memorize complex Buddhist scriptures. By doing this, they could legally and safely wander right through enemy territory playing their flute, blending perfectly into daily life while secretly mapping out enemy fortifications and troop movements. It's brilliant.
And the komuso was just one of the 7 roles. They also seamlessly mimicked merchants. By pretending to sell goods, a shinobi could inspect a rival lord's local economy and figure out if they were secretly hoarding military rations. They disguised themselves as entertainers, doing magic tricks or juggling in the town square, which was the perfect way to gather the latest local rumors and unguarded secrets from a relaxed crowd. Or they'd become mountain ascetics, known as yamabushi. This gave them the perfect excuse to legally cross heavily guarded borders under the guise of a religious pilgrimage. Their deep knowledge of human behavior was literally their ultimate camouflage. Okay, so we've covered their psychological tactics. Let's shift gears and look at the tangible, physical gear they actually carried. You can forget about the explosive smoke bombs. When a historical shinobi went out on a mission, they carried the shinobi rokugu, which translates to the 6 essential survival tools. These weren't deadly weapons, they were highly practical, everyday items cleverly adapted for survival, evasion, and sustained espionage in some incredibly harsh natural conditions. These 6 tools are essentially a masterclass in minimalist survival. First, you have the amagasa, a woven hat that could shield against sudden rain or even enemy arrows. Then, the kaginawa, a grappling hook used to scale steep castle walls under the cover of night.
Once they were inside, they could leave coded messages for their spy network using sekihitsu, a type of chalk. They carried highly specialized kusuri, or medicines, in case they were injured. They had a tenyugi, a multi-purpose 3-foot cloth that could be a makeshift bandage or water filter. And all the while, they carried a portable uchitake, a bamboo fire starter that was absolutely essential for staying warm in the freezing mountains, or, executing the occasional arson operation.
Take the kunai, for example. Pop culture has totally convinced us that this was some sleek, aerodynamic throwing knife. In reality, it was essentially a heavy-duty, rusted iron gardening trowel. It didn't even have sharpened edges. The shinobi used it to dig holes under fences, pry open heavy wooden doors, gouge out footholds in mud walls, and occasionally use it as a blunt, close-quarters striking tool. It was the ultimate indestructible Swiss Army knife of the Sengoku period. Practical utility always came before combat.
Now, surviving deep in enemy territory meant you couldn't exactly just pull over and stop for a hot meal. Enter the Hyarogen, the historical ninja's energy pill. And listen, this isn't folklore, this is highly advanced 16th century pharmacology. They combine ginseng for stamina and stress relief, cinnamon for circulation, lotus seeds and yam for sustained complex carbohydrates, and rice for a quick glucose hit. They would boil all of this down into dense, dark little spheres. Eating just a few of these scientifically formulated superfoods could keep a shinobi energized and completely alert for days on end, while hiding up in the rafters of an enemy stronghold.
And their pharmacology didn't stop at energy. They figured out how to basically hack their own physiology during grueling stakeouts, where moving to get food or water meant instant death. They developed a pill called Sukatsugan, a thirst quencher made primarily from crushed, pickled plums. The intense sourness forced their salivary glands to overproduce, keeping their mouth and throat moist without needing a single drop of water. On the flip side, they had Kikatsugan, made from buckwheat and yam powder. When swallowed, this pill would aggressively expand in the stomach, completely tricking the brain into feeling full and eliminating the physical pain of starvation. It's wild.
Beyond just surviving the elements, medicine offered them the ultimate psychological cover. Let's look at Shikentan. This was a potent painkiller and digestive aid made from a really complex blend of herbs and animal musk. But here is the absolute genius part of it. Carrying this medicine served a dual purpose. Yes, it healed their injuries, but if they were captured or interrogated by enemy guards, having a bag full of Shikentan provided a flawless, verifiable alibi. They could just say, hey, I'm not a spy, I'm just a traveling medicine peddler. Their survival gear doubled seamlessly as their psychological cover story.
All right, let's step in from the wilderness for a moment and explore where the shinobi actually lived. We are talking about the ninja yashiki, or ninja house. Now, this was not a military barracks. It wasn't a castle designed for heavy combat. From the outside, it looked exactly like a completely normal, humble farmer's house. But the internal architecture? It was a brilliantly deceptive fortress. It was designed with one ultimate goal: to protect crucial intelligence, buy time against sudden raids, and ensure the shinobi could escape without leaving a single trace behind.
The interior was an absolute marvel of defensive engineering. A ninja could literally step back against a revolving karakuri wall, give it a firm push, and instantly vanish into a hidden, pitch-black corridor. There were shallow trapdoors built into the hallways. They weren't designed to kill, but to suddenly snag an intruder's leg, buying the resident just a few precious seconds to flee. And they had hidden compartments built directly beneath the floorboards or inside structural beams, designed specifically to hide their most valuable assets: written scrolls containing rare gunpowder recipes and heavily guarded intelligence.
Now, just imagine creeping through one of these houses in the dead of night. You take a step, and suddenly, the floorboards beneath you begin to chirp. This is the Ugusubari, the nightingale floor. It's this brilliant piece of auditory engineering where the metal nails rub against the floor joists under the slightest pressure, emitting a sound that sounds exactly like a chirping bird. To an intruder, it might just sound like nature outside. But to the sleeping shinobi, it was a high-tech, early warning security alarm system that instantly alerted them to the exact location of the threat.
So, how did the role of the shinobi actually change over time? Well, during the chaotic, war-torn Sengoku period, they were highly sought-after mercenaries and guerrilla fighters utilizing that rugged mountain terrain. But a massive turning point came in the year 1582. The shinobi of Iga and Koka safely escorted the future shogun, Tokugawa Ieyasu, across hundreds of miles of treacherous enemy territory after a sudden political assassination. Because of this monumental display of loyalty, when the peaceful Edo period finally began in the 1600s, the shinobi were integrated directly into the government. They evolved into elite secret police, palace guards, and ultimately, highly disciplined bureaucrats. And we aren't just talking about nameless shadows in the dark here. History gives us concrete documentation of some truly incredible leaders. Hattori Hanzo, he He wasn't just a legend. He was a very real samurai who commanded the Iga Shinobi and was trusted to guard the main gates of Edo Castle. Then we have Mochizuki Chiyome, a brilliant female leader who utilized those Shichihode tactics we talked about to build a vast, all-female intelligence network disguised entirely as traveling shrine maidens. And Fuma Kotaro, the fearsome leader of a specialized clan known for their devastating psychological and naval guerrilla warfare. The real history is honestly so much more fascinating than any movie.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to focus on this one core truth. The ultimate goal of a ninja was not to kill. Assassination was loud, it was messy, and it brought a lot of unwanted attention. Their true mission was always to survive, to gather crucial knowledge, and to return alive at all costs. To a samurai, dying honorably in battle was the highest virtue, but to a shinobi, dying simply meant your lord never got the information. Their entire existence, their tools, their pills, their disguises, their deceptive houses, was engineered around the supreme value of survival and the safe delivery of truth.
The shinobi were absolute masters of their environment. They were experts in human psychology and true innovators of science and survival. They thrived in chaos, not through brute force, but through extreme adaptability, rigorous emotional control, and relentless resilience. So as we unroll these ancient scrolls and look back at their history, the real question is, how can you apply this ancient shinobi wisdom to navigate the challenges of our complex modern world? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the real history of the shinobi.